and welcome to the latest episode of Off the Fence. This is your weekly rundown of all things jump racing, and it is brought to you in association with BoyleSports. Myself, Geraghty and Tony Keenan will be with you every week from now until Cheltenham and beyond. And so you don't miss a single episode, because you won't want to miss a single episode, please do hit subscribe on our YouTube channel, and that way you'll be notified when the latest episode drops and you get to hear from the boys, who I will introduce now. Barry Geraghty, how are you today?
I'm very well, Vanessa, thank you. How are you?
I'm in excellent form. Very, very cheery form, as I'm sure you can tell. Tony Keenan, is all good with you?
Oh, it's good, excellent. Yeah, good weekend's racing. Very good weekend's racing, so interested in getting started talking about it.
Yeah, loads to get stuck into. And of course, with Barry Geraghty with us, there is no better place to start than with Constitution Hill, bolting up in the Betfair Fighting Fifth Hurdle up at Newcastle on his seasonal reappearance, his long-awaited seasonal reappearance. But my goodness me, it was worth waiting for. Barry, you're connected with the horse. Long-time viewers know the story behind the horse, and obviously we've been following him all through last season, and now for him to come and do this on his seasonal reappearance and put down a marker like that for the Champion Hurdle, just talk us through your emotions kind of watching the race and what you made of the performance.
Well, it was, for me, it was a bit like Cheltenham. You're hoping for a big performance and then boom, he just delivers. But it wasn't going to be straightforward. Tactics, there was a question mark what would make the running. Not So Sleepy wasn't one you'd want to be stuck behind after what he did 2 years ago when he jinked and unseated at the first. Also, you have the new white hurdles, which were any horse was having his first run of the season, and both Constitution Hill and Not So Sleepy were one of those. That could cause a little issue. So I think it was a great decision to go and roll on with him. He's so straightforward. He schools brilliantly. He works brilliantly. He's so relaxed, everything he does. So I think it was a great call by Nicky and Nico to let him pop along in front and just stepped it up as he went. His jumping was brilliant and slick. He jumped the fourth hurdle. He raised the tempo. He quickened. He started to stretch the field, turned into the straight. He quickened again, and Epitant missed the third last, and for me that was just from the injection of pace that Constitution Hill had put into it. He rolled down, then pinged the second last, and threw a playful leap at the last. He was toying with the opposition really, and rolled home 12 lengths clear of Epitant, who has been 3 lengths behind Honeysuckle in last year's Champion Hurdle, 9 lengths behind her the year before. So the way he won, the style in which he did it. Interestingly, Jamie Lynch, he clocked him from the 4 furlong pole to the 2 furlong pole, was 0.8 seconds slower than what Flightline did in the Breeders' Cup Classic. So I wouldn't have normally used a comparison like that, but Jamie obviously knows what he's talking about when he put it up.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. And just in terms of, obviously, like you've mentioned there, you're hoping rather than, you're hoping going into the race that he's going to put up a showing like that. But from when we last saw him last season, he seems like his jumping in particular, he seems sort of more confident at his hurdles to be that slick and to be that sharp. Is that something that you think he's sort of improved on with a bit of age?
Yeah, I think so. He seemed more professional. But he would have done a lot of schooling through the autumn. Nicky would never hold back in that department. So, but even he's had a bit of work on his back. They did a good bit of work with him, just building him up behind the saddle, where he had that muscle wastage originally after his point to point. So they've done a good bit of work there, which could have brought on more improvement as well. So, but the jump he threw at the last, he was rapid, quick. It was a bit like Binocular or Bouvier or Hurricane Fly or some of those proper hurdlers, but through the race he was really good, really measured, really professional, and for me it was a brilliant buzz to see him roll down the straight like that. That's what you dream of.
Where would you expect him to go next? You obviously know Nicky well, you know how he campaigns his horses. What do you think the next steps are, not only with where we might see him on a race course, but also what will they do with him at home? Try and give us a bit of insight into what his training will be like. I suppose it's keeping it the same really after that performance.
Yeah, he'll have an easy week. The race wouldn't have taken much out of him, but he did have to travel up and back. I actually got a photo sent to me this morning from Neil Taylor, Nicky's driver, of him looking out over the stable door, and he looked fairly content in himself. But I'd imagine he'll have an easy week and they'll just step his work back up again. But Christmas will be the next stop for him. Whether that's Kempton or Leopardstown remains to be seen, but the impression I get that Kempton would be slightly favoured. Maybe Leopardstown might come into play if Kempton happened to dry out a little bit like Ascot was the previous week.
Okay, and Tony, we'll bring you in now. I mean, currently this horse is now 4-6 for the Champion Hurdle in March, and I mean, going into the Fighting Fifth, I personally felt like he couldn't put up a performance that was going to make him even shorter than he already was, and yet he goes and does something like that, and now he looks as though he could potentially go off the shortest priced Champion Hurdle favourite in forever, or a very long time anyway.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what was... Bouverdale would have been pretty short for the one where he beat Mellon narrowly, and Hurricane Fly, I think, was beaten at odds on as well. Actually, it was an 11 out of 10 performance from him, faultless performance. There was a very, very brief moment turning in. We thought, oh, Epperton's going quite well, but he was gone within a flash. It was the type of raid, I suppose, that is going to produce a big rating. I thought the raid was nearly the most interesting part of it, because the market said there was no chance, there was very little chance of him getting beaten. It wouldn't be normal or typical of a Nicky Henderson horse to go off and just force the pace like that. That usually would take a lead, but it did, as it massively produced this huge figure. Now look, he's been crowned and all this afterwards. He's only had 4 runs. We'd like to see him go on and add a little bit of longevity to these kind of figures that he's put up the last twice, which really have been, you know, into the stratosphere. We haven't seen performances like this from hurdlers in recent seasons. And look, I think he's rightly where he is at the top of the market. Honeysuckle is very good. She's unbeaten, but I don't think she was as good last season as she was the previous season. Barry mentioned the winning distance over Epperton in the last 2 champion hurdles. Now, Epperton probably wasn't as good in the first one of those, but I just think Constitution is going to be very hard to stop. It's stating the obvious, but it is what it is. It is what it is at the moment. Statement is a nice horse to add into it. He has plenty of potential too, but the bar seems to be set very high after Saturday.
An 11 out of 10 performance. I don't think I've ever heard you say that, Tony. I think that's a first for the show. I'm impressed. What did you make of L'Homme Presse up at Newcastle, winning the rehearsal chase there off a hefty weight, making his seasonal debut and putting down his marker for the Gold Cup, for which he is currently a 6-1 shot with BoyleSports. Were you impressed by that weight carrying performance from him?
Yeah, a very encouraging return from him. Only fault really was the bad mistake at the 6, but he was soon back going well. In fact, really impressed the way he travelled through the race. He looked like he was a class above them. Jockey never really had to get serious with him. This win was coming at a time when the stable had been a bit quiet. It was also coming at a track that may not have been totally ideal. I think stiffer tracks might suit him better. Venetia Williams had said after the entry that she felt that the kind of flat left-handed track at Liverpool hadn't really suited him. Newcastle's similar to that. Coped with it very well at the weekend, and also coped well with ground. The time for, I think their time base going was giving it as good. It's also a good start for these second season novices in the stay-in division. Lifetime Ambition also ran a screamer in the Tri-Town. The horse I was kind of interested, I haven't done anything really anti-post for Cheltenham at the moment. There's a few reasons for that. The prices of horses is probably the main one. I'm just kind of looking for something to hit me over the head and say bet me. But the horse I was interested in was Capodanno at the start of the year for the Gold Cup, and he got a nice boost with Lifetime Ambition, but he just seems to have gone off the radar altogether at the moment. I see the Leopardstown entries for Christmas are out today. He hasn't even got an entry there in the 3-mile race, so I just wonder about his well-being at the moment. But L'Homme Presse, yeah, he has to be kind of pushing towards the top of the Gold Cup market there. I would look to pick at the English horses at the moment with his effectiveness at the track proven, and RSA can be a good guide for the Gold Cup, of course. At the Broadway, sorry.
So lots of positives for L'Homme Presse then. Barry, were you equally as positive on him? Do you think he's Galopin Des Champs' biggest threat? These novices, as Tony's touched upon coming through, it could be a very exciting Gold Cup market.
Oh, it's definitely very strong. It was a good performance, but as Tony said, he was different. He looked different class, but he should look different class against the opposition. There were smart horses. Into Overdrive was a winner previously in Weatherby, but you'd like to think he'd be a lot better than those. For me, it would have tied in very similar to Protector Rat. They have a similar mark, similar age profile. Protector Rat was third in last year's Gold Cup, so I wouldn't put him streets ahead of him yet. And as I said last week, I'd forgive Applutard that run in Haydock, and I'd give him another chance just to see how he can reproduce. But I'd probably have more fear in that Plutard for Galloping the Champ at the minute.
Okay, we'll take that. Let's stick with you, Barry, to discuss Champ's performance in the long distance hurdle back down at Newcastle. Obviously, it was a terrific race between the old boys himself and Paisley Park. Did you expect him to be able to put up a performance like that at the age of 10, given his profile in a race like that?
Well, it was probably the day to catch him. First run last year in Ascot, he won the Long Walk Hurdle. The year before, his first run was in the Game Spirit over 2 mile, and he was second to Scu Royale. So first day seems to be the day. So that definitely was the day. If you're going to have a few quid in him, you'd be having it on that day. I thought Paisley Park ran a serious race for his first run. But it must have been stripped a lot fitter this time, because he has struggled before. But it was a great run from him. Two brilliant warriors, battled all the way to the line. Jonja went a lovely pace, stepped it up as they went. Paisley Park got a little outpaced early on in the straight, but ran all the way to the line. So it was a brilliant finish, and great to see those old-timers putting in performances like that. As regards the stairs hurdle, though, there's plenty of strength and depth in there with Flora and Porter, Classical Dream, Buzz as well. So there's lots of quality there, and they might just be, I suppose, making the runner-up spots or filling some of the places maybe.
I mean, I don't want to say you'd hope so, but you kind of would hope so. You'd hope that there's something a bit younger and more progressive than the likes of Champ and Paisley Park. And in fairness, that sort of is spoken in the market, given the fact that with BoyleSports, Champ is 16s and Paisley Park 20s for the Stayers hurdle after that performance. But we'll take it as it was, which was an excellent show on the day. Barry, let's stick with you, because also on the day, Nicky Henderson kicked off the Newbury card with an excellent winner with Jet Power, who's now 6-1 for the Supreme with BoyleSports. Pretty highly regarded individual. Had you heard much about him prior to him making his hurdling debut here? Was he on your radar?
There was definitely good vibes about him, and he put in a real quality, classy performance. And what he did, you'd have to say he'd be worthy of being towards the head of the market of what we've seen to date. He didn't have an awful lot to do to beat Attack Blue, but it was just the style in which he did it. He jumped a little bit right at times and was untidy at the last. He'll definitely improve on that, but just the way he travelled, the way he picked up, and the way he won, the way he went to the line, it was really impressive, and it was a stamp of a quality horse. So it's definitely he's worthy to be acknowledged at the head of the market anyway.
Okay, and Tony, we just a few notable performances in Ireland to discuss, including Classic Getaway proving a bit of a surprise at Geraghty Park on his chase debut, beating Manella Kukuna that day. God, I'll always get those two horses wrong. Were you as surprised as some were by that performance?
I was surprised. It's not easy to get the two of those horses confused, because not hard to get the two of them confused, but they're two very different horses actually. One of them's as lazy as sin and the other one's very free going. The Willie Mullins version, I think he had things go right for him on Saturday. He got a very soft lead in the sense that he got 4 or 5 lengths at the start. I don't like this horse, the runner up. There's something a little bit off about him. I don't like the way he carries his tail. He's been doing that for a while, and he had everything right on Saturday, and the stablemate still beat him. He might be better going left-handed. He shifts left here at Geraghty, and he has done that before, Punchestown last back end. But excellent performance out of the winner, who listening or reading the interviews beforehand sounded like he was going to need it. I talked to 2 people at the races yesterday saying that in the paddock beforehand he looked like he was carrying a bit relative to the other two, so there should be fitness to come from him. He also got beaten at a short price first time out last season, so all that is to his credit. He was also pretty free in the race, early stages. He thought he jumped well, bar slight mistake at the third last. He wasn't much as a novice hurdler. He was fine, but you wouldn't have stood out as being a star in the Mullins camp. But this was a massive step forward for fences, and horses can do that. The one concern I would have with him is that he has bled in the past. I think there was a report of the stewards after the Albert Bartlett last year that he had bled, so that would be a little bit of concern. But if this performance can be taken at face value, he looks definitely up to winning graded races going forward.
And Classic Getaway getting a positive mention from Tony then, not a fluke on the day. Sticking with you, Tony, and going to Grange Clear West, who impressed another one for Team Willie Mullins, this time over hurdles, now 7-1 for the Ballymore, shorter for the Albert Bartlett at 4-1 with BoyleSports. This was a pretty expensive horse race, wasn't it, considering the price tags attached to some of the horses in the race.
Yeah, look, the winner himself was highly impressive. I thought Peltown tried to drop him out and get him to drop the bit and let the others kind of go at it, and he did so beautifully and won very well. But to me, this race is just where racing is at the moment, where National Hunt racing is at. If you want a race that's emblematic of the sport at the moment, this maiden hurdle in Navan on Sunday is just where it's at. So we had 5 horses in this race that kind of totaled up to £1.5 million when they'd been bought. Grange Clare West came in at £430,000. Cuda Sheva came in at £370,000. They were all both bought out of pints and sales afterwards. And then we had 3 store horses that cost a fortune too. Firm Footings was €220,000. Mate Trump Card was €230,000, and the Flying Spore was €220,000 again. Like, there are maidens up the corner where horses wouldn't cost a half of this. It's amazing money, and we are in a boom time now for National Hunt racing. People selling horses, whether it be stores, whether it be pointers, even buying horses, some horses off the flat. It's a fascinating part of the game. I don't think it's a good or bad thing, it's just a thing. But just to put it in context about how much people are spending and what's the return they're going to get. The Gold Cup last year, the winner took home £351,000 sterling. So it's just, there's obviously complete another disconnect between what you're paying and what you return. Now, obviously, the return is not solely monetary. People get an awful kick out of it as well. But it's just, it's very interesting, and it's been going on for a while, but it just seems to have really kicked on, especially with the store horses in the last couple of years. I think there's just some massive spending owners out there. And not only in the Gordon Elliott and Willie Mullins yard. I see John McConnell has bought some very expensive horses recently, from points and also on the flat. So this is what you kind of need to compete basically at the moment. Yes, you can nick one here or there, but at the top level it's difficult.
And Barry Geraghty, given your role as a trader now, you must be sat there thinking this is just music to my ears, rubbing your hands, right?
Well, it is when you have a good one. There's a little bit of a difference. You're getting really well paid for what could be special, and they're probably not so well paid for what mightn't just be special, might be a step below. Also, the price of stores, as Tony mentioned, makes it harder to restock. So it pushes the boundaries for everyone.
It's pushing the boundaries. Tony, back to the racing action. What on earth happened to American Mike? Talk me through that, please.
Yeah, a very interesting race, this Monksfield novice hurdle at Navan. I think the pace it tells the tale with this. They came from the third last 5 seconds slower than any other hurdle on the card, so they're absolutely walking like ballpark 25 lengths slower than any other hurdle. Visually, everyone could see that. Affordale, Fury and American Mike just went at it from an early stage. Neither was giving each other much pace, and I think they're going to take a long time to come right after this. Just these kind of attritional races, I think, take a lot out of horses. Affordale, Fury beforehand, he was having a third race now in a fairly short space of time. And I just looking in the preliminary, seemed to sweat it up a little bit between his legs. I would say he needs a break now. I wouldn't like to see him running till February at the earliest. And American Mike, the bubble has burst a bit for me on him. He jumped poorly at Ryle. He was at least as bad on Sunday, shifting a bit right, very up in the air. He was dying a death, kind of up the hill. Now, perhaps Joseph O'Brien's Dawn Rising would have won anyway, such was the ground he made up. Like, I think American Mike was leading 2 lengths over him coming to the last, and he finished up getting beaten 8. But this is a piece of form that would be very questionable. You're talking about races that maybe have some little bit of anti-post appeal at the moment. The Supreme would be one to me that just wouldn't really, because you've got Facile Vega and you've got the Nicky Henderson winner from Newbury there, quite short. Maybe doesn't really take into account the fact that they could step in a stone and be out for the season type of thing. But the Ballymore's different. The Ballymore has some sort of appeal to it, because Facile Vega is kind of also favoured for that race. I think if he finishes up here, something has gone wrong with him. I think he'll be sticking to Supreme if things have gone right. And then you've got the couple of horses from this race. To me, I wouldn't really like them at all. American Mike and Dawn Rising are kind of in around the 10 to 12-1 mark. So there might be something there that people are kind of interested in, the straight at a bigger price. Maybe it is that horse that won the maiden hurdle on Sunday, the Classic Getaway. Sorry, a classic. I'm getting these confused. Grangelow West.
Yeah, Grangelow West.
Grangelow West. You know, maybe he's the one, but definitely that's one race that maybe of some interest, because it is quite slim pickings, I think, for Cheltenham Anti-Post at the moment. I think there's some very difficult races, some short prices there, and it definitely wouldn't be encouraging me to charge in and bet something at the moment.
Okay, but the Ballymore market might be of interest. Barry, a quick word from you on Lucia. One on hurdling debut for Nicky, and straight into a listed race. Not a very Nicky Henderson thing to do, I didn't think, and yet she won nicely. She's now 4-1 for the mares. For the mares novices with BoyleSports, and it's short enough, but given where they started her, is that a telling sign with Nicky? Is that something we should be reading into, that was her starting point for the season?
Yeah, I think so, but like that, he'd only just really get into the battalions for that meeting. That's the kick-off point when Nicky gets busy. So a little bit like Jet Powered, it was a really impressive performance, travelled really well, jumped nicely, but will improve for it. As regards the opposition, She's a Saint was second, improved for her first run, but Poetic Music was beaten 13 lengths by Facile Vega, went sixth in the champion bumper, was 11 lengths behind Lucia. So that's a good line of form. She had the benefit of a run too over hurdles in having won in Ludlow. So I think it adds a bit of weight to it. It was a very impressive performance. It backed up what she'd done in bumpers, and no, I'd say she's an exciting mare.
What about Lamilos winning the Coral Gold Cup for the Skeltons? Another big weekend for the Skeltons off the back of Protector out last weekend, and they take the big one again this weekend, Barry. It's all going swimmingly well for them at the moment, isn't it?
It really is. It was a big performance. It was a good competitive race. Remastered kept on going all the way line, but he got to within a half a length, Remastered did, of the winner, and couldn't get any closer. The winner has form in heavy ground as well, so he could be a real Welsh national contender, but you could say the same for Remastered. He has a second wind up. Real dowers there, so I'd imagine both of those could go that route. Corrick Rambler ran a good race, Bustleton ran a good race, the Pipe Horse in third, who I won't attempt to pronounce his name at the minute, definitely ran well, but I just wonder would he have, that's the one. Yeah, I just wonder how it would be if it was testing conditions in Chepstow. So for me, the first two, but I think the winner deserves plenty of credit because, as I say, Remastered wasn't getting any closer to him in the last 100 yards.
Okay, and what about mention for Phil Dorr as well? Made his chasing debut in his second start this season over in Ireland. He's now 8-1 for the Arkle with BoyleSports, and they always said with him, and I think Barry, you've mentioned this, that he sort of hurdled a little bit big and airy at times, and now seeing him going chasing, this is really his area to excel in, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought so. I thought he jumped really well. Sinroy brought him probably at a steady enough pace. Jumped nicely. Both horse Sinroy will probably improve a little bit in his jumping department, but they quickened really well from 3 out. They quickened again 2 out and down over the last, but Phil Dorr I thought was very professional in the straight. For a 4-year-old, he showed a lot of scope, a lot of attitude. He was well up for it, and he won comfortably. He pricked his ears after the last and he galloped away to the line, but he in no way was getting to the bottom of him, so he'd plenty left in the tank. I thought it was a good performance, and I believe he could go to Leopardstown at Christmas.
Yeah, fingers crossed we see him there. And just a quick mention finally, McFabulous beat Time Hill and in a very small field John Frankham Novices Chase at Newbury at the weekend. Tactical little affair, but really the race completely fell apart, and Time Hill now, what should they do with him now, Barry?
Yeah, well, it's interesting here. Philip Hobbs said he's going to go back and give him another couple of goes or fences. For me, I just worry a little bit. He's not the biggest horse in the world. He did really well over hurdles. I don't think he's taken as well to fences as you would have liked him to do. Well, he hasn't. But he's a very impressive hurdler. So I just wonder if they stay chasing for much longer, will that affect his hurdling when he goes back to, or if he goes back to that department at some point. But for me, I'd be moving that direction sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, he was a solid yardstick, to be fair. Surely there's races to be won with him over hurdles, but fingers crossed we might see him over the smaller obstacles sooner rather than later. That about wraps up our What Happened Where section, but before we finish it, we have to say what our performance of the weekend was. If we don't get a full house here with a certain horse, I'll be so disappointed. So I'll go first, Constitution Hill. You next, Barry.
Snap.
Yes. 2. Come on, Tony.
Well, sure, of course it's Constitution Hill, but I also want to give a mention to the big dog. Very good training performance with Peter Fahey in the Tri-Town. excellent interview afterwards with Brian Gleeson and a couple of lads that own him. They seem to get a great kick out of it. It seems to be, again, contradicting what I was saying earlier, a relatively cheap bay for what he was. It's difficult to win one of these stay-in handicap chases, but he's now won 3 of them. Punchestown Grand National, Trail, Limerick National, and now at Tri-Town. And also he had a whole season in the wilderness last term where they trained him around the Welsh National. It didn't really work out, so credit to the trainer, he's got him back. I don't think he's the most straightforward to train though. The 2 lads were mentioning, sort of Nichols and Knox, that he's got along the way. He obviously, with his name, he is a big unit that's inclined to maybe pick up stuff like that. So I think as long as the ground is on the slow side, he'll remain competitive in those sort of races, and with the potential more to come if he can get stepping up to a marathon trip. He does things kind of his own way in his own time. Like, I don't think there's any hurrying up with him. Some of his jumps yesterday there, he spent a bit long in the air, but bags of stamina and still has a little bit of upside. Couldn't be in better form than he is at the moment. Did well to sort of catch up with the Jessica Harrington ridden runner-up, who got a very forceful ride and looked at him quick coming to the last. So yeah, good performance out of him too.
So it's Constitution Hill, but an honourable big mention to the big dog. I like that. That wraps up our What Happened Where section, but now we get to hear from Leon Blanche from BoyleSports on what they made of the weekend's action.
What a very informative weekend's racing we've just had. Constitution Hill. What can you say about this Nicky Henderson superstar? He's now 7-4 on favourite to win the champion hurdle at Cheltenham in March, having been 5-4 before his effortless victory in the Fighting Fifth at Newcastle. He really was electric. How quick he gets over the hurdles, the turn of pace he possesses. This horse really does seem to have everything. Also, L'Homme Presse, very, very impressed with his weight carrying performance at Newcastle. He's now a 6-1 chance from 10s to win the blue ribbon at Cheltenham. That of course is the Gold Cup. The favourite at the moment is Geraghty and Tony. He's a 5-2 chance. Will we get to see him at Leopardstown at Christmas? I think so. I think that's probably where we'll get to see Geraghty and Tony. Also a Plutard. He's at 7-1 at the present time after a disappointing performance at Haydock. Who else was decent? Well, I thought it was a very, very good performance by Grange Clare West. He was ultra impressive, winning at Navan on Sunday for Paisley Park and Willie Mullins. We don't know which novice hurdle he's going to go to yet, but I think this horse could and should have a big, big future. But without a shadow of a doubt, the star of last weekend, Constitution Hill, 7-4 on favourite to win the champion hurdle at the Cheltenham Festival.
Okay, now it's time to have a look at the week ahead, and obviously, as always, we record very early, so we're going with what we think might run where at this stage. But it's worth giving a good mention, Barry, to the Tingle Creek, the Betfair Tingle Creek on Saturday. This looks to be where we should and hopefully will see Shishkin make his seasonal debut, and he's an even money favourite with BoyleSports for the race as things stand, taking on Grenadine, who obviously won the race last year at 7-4. Edwardstone in there at 7-2. If those three did show up, then this would be a really excellent renewal and a fascinating renewal given all the different strands of the Tingle Creek.
Yeah, definitely. The vibe's been good from in Shishkin, the camp, as regards the Tingle Creek. So fingers crossed he gets there. Obviously, last year's winner Grenadine you'd have to respect, but for me at the top level, he is vulnerable. Shishkin beat him 10 lengths in Kempton last Christmas. I'd have more interest in Edwardstone being a danger to Shishkin. I think he deserves a bit more credit than the price makes him. Progressive type, his first run of the season, but he's meant to be in Cheltenham. He was meant to be in Ascot, so I'm sure he's been well prepped and will be ready to go. So for me, Edwardstone will be the one of interest to chase home Shishkin.
Okay, and what vibes have you heard about John Bond since his chasing debut? Obviously, everyone was quite impressed by that, and he looks as though he could go in Henry VIII at Sandown. Have you heard anything on the ground since about him? Any intel for us?
No, but everyone's very happy. Obviously, it was a good performance in Warwick, and he beat the the Paul Nicholls horse impressively that day. Who could face him again in the Henry VIII? But Boot Hill, who was impressive in Ascot in the 2 mile handicap when he beat So Scottish, is probably the one for me who might give him most to do. But I'd imagine John Bond would go off a very short price and should return and get the result.
And Tony, a quick mention for you for the racing in Ireland at the weekend. Obviously, the Hatton's Grace looks to see the return of Honeysuckle. We also have the Dreammore and the Royal Bond. From the entries, who are you most looking forward to seeing at the weekend?
Yeah, well, everyone will be looking forward to seeing Honeysuckle. I don't think there's going to be too many to take her on. Just looking through the entries there today, a lot of the horses seem to be 2 milers, have maybe run a little bit recently. Chihupu would be one who would have possibilities of hitting the frame if he takes his chance. I think they did the right thing taking him out of the Morgiana. They've seen him run a couple of times over 2 miles now on decent ground at the end of last season. Didn't really work out. All along he's looked like a horse that won 2.5, but running into Honeysuckle is going to be very difficult. That said, the novice races look like they're going to be very competitive. I think Willie Mullins has started treating this meeting like the final meeting of the summer, which is kind of mad because it's the first weekend of December. But the horses he's running are not really his winter types as much as they are the horses that run like Galway and Killarney's and the Stowell and things like that. The Royal Bond, which Champ Cayley would look the obvious one of his. They're running really, really impressive in Tipperary. Farmers worked out with Brazil, giving it a bit of a lift at Nice afterwards. I thought his other likely runner, Hercule Desai, took a bit of a knock in the form there at the weekend. Imagine got beaten at Gore, and despite having absolutely everything go his way, I backed him on Saturday. I was kind of cautioning me luck, and then actually looked at the sections and the finishing speed. He got the softest lead possible and was completely flattered probably to finish second. Winner of that race actually looks a decent prospect. Gavin Cromwell's JP McManus horse. That's going to be good. I think Gordon Elliott's going to have an awful lot actually for the Royal Bond for a change, but there are some other interesting horses from other yards. Marine National for Barry Connell, he's pretty exciting, and you've Pat Theroux for Gavin Cromwell, who won in Gaul, looks pretty decent as well. Dreammore again looks, Gordon Elliott's going to have a strong team for it. Seems to have a particularly good bunch of novice chasers. 3 Stripe Life, Maggie Potter probably be in there. Willie Mullins is going to kind of have these more summary type of horses like Adamantly Chosen, Authorised Dart, El Barra, and the recent Cheltenham win, the Wondrous Banbridge, possibly going to turn up for it. He was really good in Cheltenham, showing a lot more speed than he showed over hurdles, where he looked to be more of a staying type. So I think both of those novice races are going to be excellent. We'll take what we're given with Honeysuckle. It probably won't be that competitive, but good to see her all the same.
Yeah, an exciting weekend of action in store, and that also includes a big day up at Aintree, Barry, which we'll just quickly touch upon, which is the BoyleSports Beecher Chase up there, and the BoyleSports Many Clouds as well. Looks an excellent race. Having a quick look at, as things stand at the moment, what was catching your eye up at Aintree? Yeah,
you'd have to be impressed with Guy Gale, I think is it, was second to Al Dancer in the Sefton. Brilliant run, and was closing all the way to the line. So the step up and trip and the Beecher should suit there. Has plenty of form in France on a tie, so defences obviously aren't an issue. I think great chance. Interesting that Willie Mullins as captain Kangaroo entered, who won the Cork National over 3.5 mile. I wonder, is he building towards a national profile to get him over here, get him some experience. But at his mark, he'd want to go up to get into the national, so he'd want to be winning this. But an interesting entry, I thought. As regards to Many Cloud, that has entered up a brilliant race. You have a High Seigneur, Chantry House, Conflated, Dashel Dancer, Dusart, Miller's Bank. There's loads there. Fury Road. I think Dusart is a horse who improved a lot in air last season. I think he's horsing the up. But if Conflated was to reproduce what he did at the Dublin Racing Festival, would be the one to beat. He obviously had a good run behind Envy Allen, went third in Down Royal. A High Seigneur, I would forgive him his last run. He improved it off from his first run last year to his second, so I'd expect a better show from him. So that could be a really interesting race, just depending on how many of those turn up.
I so hope a High Seigneur runs, and I hope he just stops messing around basically and starts putting his best foot forward, because I'm such a fan, but I'm starting to run out of time for him a little bit. So I hope you're right, Barry. I hope that he can bounce back from that seasonal debut. That's about wraps up the show, guys. We've got nothing that's majorly taken our eye for the offence section, so we're bypassing that, and we have nearly run out of time. But please, viewers, Do check out the BoyleSports offers that are on the screen right now. They're not to be missed. Head over to their website and make use of them. Plenty of offers for you up for grabs ahead of what is a very big weekend of racing, and hopefully we have covered that enough for you. We will of course be back next week, a week's time, where we'll be reviewing the Tingle Creek, the Beecher Chase, all the races we've just spoken about, and I think we'll have plenty of our questions answered, as Tony and Barry have touched upon. Loads of nice horses running this weekend, so we'll have plenty to talk about. Do not forget to hit subscribe on our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single episode of Off the Fence, because why would you want to with the sort of intel we've just given you after this week? This is a not to be missed show, so do hit subscribe, and as always, your comments and your feedback is always appreciated. But for now, thank you very much for watching. That was Off the Fence.